Good evening, gentlemen. Michael and Cam, here we are again. This time we are discussing episodes 39 and 40, at least potentially 41, of Awakening from the Meaning Crisis by John Vervaeke. We are now finally reaching the core thesis of John Vervaeke in episode 39, which is called The Religion of No Religion. So excited to be here. It's been a good journey. I would open the floor. Whoever, as the spirit moves, please share what you want to do and perhaps then move to our business of summarizing by Cam. Any opening comments?
Um, yeah, so I would recommend not dwelling too much on episode 39. Um, Mr. Vervaeke's he's moved away from the language that he was using when he
Mhm.
recorded these. I think it's probably a good idea to touch briefly on what the three of us think he was doing there and why. But I would move into 40 and 41. 41 is where it really starts to get interesting for me. But there is some pretty key setup, I think, in 40 that I
Mhm.
could use some help understanding, I think, with the two of you.
Okay.
Uh,
Sounds good.
those are my thoughts going into this session.
Um,
I know what you mean about 39. I do think it's important, but I've kind of find that he seems to be bringing things together finally, all that sort of prep to say, okay, here's the meat of the matter sort of thing. Um, and I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't have as much deep time to spend with this as I wanted, because as I listened to it, I'm like, oh my God, this is so helpful. Like what he's structuring now, how he's explaining the different aspects of even what reasoning is, right? And that is interesting because I'm grateful that I've actually heard that basic approach about reasoning and logic and all that. What do you call it? Is it not logic? What does he call it?
Well,
What?
rationality. So there's
Yeah,
reasoning involves the application of logic and probabilistic thinking.
but it's like part of what I learned from E. McGilchrist is that most mental illness is caused by hyper-rationality.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and that's exactly Vervaeke's saying here is that you can't just be logical and be able to orient properly. It doesn't work. You have to, that's only one aspect, right? And that's exactly, what McGilchrist was alluding to. He says that without the proper balance of left-right brain influences, when you become hyper-rational, you actually become kind of stupid because you're so convinced of your point of view, you have no capacity to see anything from a different point of view, that you become, kind of self-congratulatory on your genius, which is of course not. Um, so, or how right you are, right? That kind of thing. So, but anyway, um, I wish I had more to offer in terms of the nuances in this, but I'm very
Well, I think
excited
you
about.
do.
Really?
I think your intuitive sense and your embodied your own embodied wisdom, I think, is going to bring a lot to this. So
Oh,
I
I hope
wouldn't
so,
worry
because
too much about
I do feel like I am. I'm having this really odd experience. Is that as you read Vervaeke, I'm understanding what he's saying because I am doing much of it myself.
it. Yeah, I know. That's
Yeah,
how I see you. That
yeah,
is my
it's
observation of you.
it's incredible actually, and I'm grateful to him for all his efforts. Oh, his
Yeah. By
book's
the
out,
way, in
by the way.
case I think we covered this before, but the first he's taken this series and with a co-author, at least one co-author, I think, has put this into a text. And the
Yes.
first, I think it's a two-volume set, and the
Yep.
first volume is now published and available.
I just saw that it's on Amazon. It's on Kindle and paperback. So,
so I want to come back to 39 rather than skip the whole episode. What I would like to summarize very quickly before we move on for our shared understanding as to what part of it do you still agree with, knowing where he stands today versus when he recorded the series? Versus, we don't have to dwell on it, but in what still remains important in that episode, and what has,
In 39. That's a good
Yeah.
question.
right? So when he says, my take is, he titled it Religion of No Religion. And I think he doesn't use that language anymore. I understand that part. But what is saying foundationally, which I still think he holds, is that um, he describes religio, his view of sacred and to some degree relevance realization. And he contrasts that with credo, which is propositional belief system. And he compares and contrasts that why that is not enough. That is a having mode versus being mode, the credo. And then in this, he does talk about how um, while credo is important, credo should be in service of religio,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
So
I
in that,
That's the
see.
key point.
and
That
that
is the
point
key
I
point.
think is still true in the way
Yep,
he
I agree.
describes that.
Okay.
And then he finalized in that particular episode, he says, you know, if he goes back and historically anchors wisdom studies as starting in 1999, when the psychological and the philosophical perspectives were brought together for the first time.
Yeah.
Way
Yeah.
of
He talks about
bringing,
trying to get them in a reflective. So it's not him, but the people that were doing the work in the 70s, 80s, and 90s were trying
yeah,
to put those two into, I think he referred to it as a reflective
exactly.
relationship.
Practice. And the bottom line is that the first time he says the common idea between philosophical view and psychological view of wisdom was seeing through illusion or self-deception. And that I think is kind of the kernel of wisdom studies starting in
Yeah.
1999. And that I think is what I took away that still holds true from Vervaeke's episode 39.
I think you really nailed it. He carries that through, that wisdom is actually the ability to sort out reality. Basically, it's RR again, right? Relative realization, ultimately. And that makes total sense to me. That really rings true. I think, let's see, what was the other part that oh, this isn't 39, but one of the things that I'm hoping we can capture, if anyone has actually understood it properly, I believe that Vervaeke has put the ways of knowing in a hierarchy of sequence. Did you see that? Like, so you have experiential, you have propositional. I think that what he said, I think it was in 41, he actually says bottom up, top down. He actually shows that there's actually a sequence of knowing steps. Where I think I can't remember which one you start with, and maybe I missed it. Maybe I didn't get it right, but maybe if you guys don't relate to that, I'll find it later and I'll be able to share it. But I swear to God, that's what he did. I think he said there's kind of a
And
hierarchy.
I would like to propose we go to, if we are done with 39, if you have any other additional comments, then we can go through 40. Each of these are fairly meaty subjects. Each
Yeah,
are
they are.
episodes. So I want to make sure we don't kind of skip around, if that's okay.
Yeah,
No,
I
thank
agree.
you.
I agree with you. Are you satisfied with the cover off on 39 at this point, Anurag?
I
If
am.
we
If
to your
anybody else has
satisfaction?
more comments on it,
The only
I
other
just
comment
have
that I'll make on it is that my sense is that what he's poking at there, and he confesses it multiple times in there that what he's doing is very tentative in there, but he's really trying to get at what is it how are um, basically systems of practices, ecology of practices, we say in the EMP nomenclature. How are those actually engineered and put together and put into practice?
yeah, how, and coordinated, right? Like how do they relate to each other? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'm happy. That's enough on 39 as far as I'm concerned. On
so
Rob, Michael, is there anything else you want to
I
say on
think
that?
I'm good too. I just double checked and I don't think there's anything else
Okay.
that is
okay. So episode 40,
necessary to. dive
It's
into.
titled Wisdom and Rationality.
Okay.
And one of the things right away is that the way he describes rationality in this episode is very different than what he later on today talks about rationality. But we should stick to how he describes rationality in episode 40, where he makes a distinction between rationality as the uber capacity for self-correction, including self-correction, right? Whereas
Yeah.
I think today has given up on using rationality in that sense, and rationality today has been reduced back to simply the computational propositional reasoning of the left brain, right?
I'm
Um,
not quite following what you're saying there. So when you say that's what he's saying today,
so let me, sorry, I should be clearer. In episode 40 of
yep,
this series, he
yep.
lays out definition of rationality.
Mostly according to Cohen is
Yes,
how I understood it.
Yes.
Yep.
and then he
Okay.
expands on it as basically overcoming self-deception. Right? And he explains that rationality is basically the allows that he's trying to take the what he was calling pure reasoning, and he's expanding it to make the sense of rationality, which is bigger. Reasoning would be the left brain step by step process of breaking down a problem and what would be considered, capacity for general problem solving. And rationality, according to chapter 14, episode 14, would be ability to course correct, ability to step out and have a gestalt view, and so forth and so forth. So he is trying to recover the word rationality as the larger meaning of self-deception, overcoming self-deception, etc. In this particular.
Okay. So I might have missed that. So did you just cross-reference episode 14
No, I'm just sticking to episode 40.
or 0? Okay.
And I'm saying if you look at the most recent episodes outside of this series in last 6 months
Okay.
of Vervaeke, he has kind of given up because rationality in common parlance keeps getting reduced to
Oh,
very literal, logical left brain
Exactly.
reasoning, right?
he stopped fighting the fight about the definition of that particular word. I don't think that he's given up on the idea that he's laying out in
I agree
episode
with you.
40.
I agree with you.
Right.
I
But he
agree with you.
stopped
So
arguing
I
about
wanted to
that.
be clear about that because
Yeah.
when we say the word rationality, and
Yeah.
I heard us use it, we have to be clear which part of the, are we talking
So
simply logical reasoning, propositional?
no.
Are we talking about rationality the way it's described in episode 40, which is
Yes.
Yes.
That's how I want to
correcting
use it. That's how I
self-deception?
want to use the word. I understand that he's given up the larger fight on that particular the definition of that word in the broader audience or in more common parlance. I'm not giving that up, especially not with the two of you. The broader definition that he's after and teasing out in both episodes 40 and 41, I'm keenly interested in following
I
and
agree.
really trying to understand rationality as whatever that broader definition is, because it's a pretty intricate set of arguments that get laid out that I
Sure
feel like
is.
I'm barely tracking on, but it feels very valuable to me.
Yeah, because he
That
says in his definitions, rationality is reliably and systematically overcoming self-deception, also affording flourishing optimization, right? So that's in the diagram 7A, figure 7A, that's how he lays out what that means in this context, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's the basis, and then of course he goes into more detail, but I love that definition, by the way. That really works for me.
Yeah. I think we don't have to just clarify among ourselves. I agree wholeheartedly with Cam. We should stick to rationality as the label for what we're talking about. Even if today the language he uses, the label he uses for this concept is reasoning or reasoning capacity, right?
That's right.
It doesn't really matter,
No, it
but we
doesn't
should
matter.
stick to that. Okay. I found this to be a fantastic episode because he gets into the study of rationality, the fact that he makes rationality, he calls out rationality as domain general rather than expertise that is narrow and specific to a particular domain. I love that. And he really starts talking about, study around error and limits of rationality, which is error correction, biases, confirmation bias, and all the other kind of mistakes that happen. And it's very interesting that he talks about that and calls that out. And he also calls out, I think, that what's the source of rationality is something we need to continuously question, because he talks about how, very interestingly, I didn't realize that even when a person's belief system is totally proven, destroyed, and demonstrably proven to be wrong, they would still continue to not let go of it. And that's a psychological commitment sometimes to self-deception. And that's why rationality is hard to step away from your own strong beliefs in face of quote unquote evidence. And that's a different craft or tact that one has to take.
Yeah, I'm especially drawn to this part that you're talking about because he explains that intelligence isn't enough. And this explains something that I've run into over and over again in my life that has confused me until recently because of Vervaeke and people like Peterson and McGilchrist, because I couldn't understand why someone who had been, gone to Harvard or whatever would be so stupid about certain things. It's like, and even during this last election cycle, I'm watching people not being able to change frame around the fact that they thought something would happen and they thought that there was a certain obvious thing about what, who you should vote for. I'm not putting a value judgment here. It's, I'm not saying they're wrong about what they wanted, but then they can't accept the reasons that are likely why they didn't get what they want. And instead they project, and it's just a trip to watch. I mean, to hear, I hear it in my office a lot. And it's thank God for this study, because I'm looking at them going, oh my God, they don't know how to change frame. And all they can do is to defend their position, to their detriment, by the way. I mean, this is the part that is, and I even have a friend who is so upset with the fact that I don't see things her ways that she doesn't want to talk to me right now. Yeah, she didn't like disown me or anything, but she said, I'm so upset I can't meet with you and hang out with you right now. And I'm like, wow. That's I mean, I'm seeing this play out in front of me. And again, it's not me saying that I'm right and she's wrong. That's not the point. The point is that I felt like I have navigated the meaning around what's happening in America in a way where I'm not dysregulated by what I'm looking at in terms of what's happening, right? That doesn't mean I'm necessarily loving it or whatever, but I'm looking at going, okay, obviously, things were not as expected because certain, what do you call it? Sources of information were actually wrong. And I wasn't so surprised by that, because that's been a problem for a while. But a lot of people couldn't accept that those sources of information were distorted, and therefore what they got was different than they expected. And of course then there's this whole judgment about other people. So I think it's fascinating to actually see this science play out in front of me in real time. I think that's the part that I'm very grateful in a way. I'm not grateful people are suffering, but I'm grateful I can see the mechanisms play out in front of me in my life and in other people's lives, at least to some degree of clarity.
This brings up a very interesting point, because we all went through this. Real question is, we can see that inability to correct because of emotional commitment or whatever, confirmation.
Attachment, yeah.
We can't see it in ourselves.
Right.
So to me, the really hard question is, where am I so emotionally invested in a view that I'm open to an alternate viewpoint? And what would Because I know over the 20 years or 30 years, I have changed my opinion on many matters. But what am I committed to today that I can't see? Only others can tell me that I'm overinvested.
Well, I love that you're bringing that up, because one of the things that's so exciting about these chapters is I can't wait. I mean, I can, but I'm really anxious to get to the place where we're actually working on that. You know, I know it is the psychotechnologies that would help us be better at uncovering that which we are blind to, that is affecting us negatively, that is you know, slowing down or inhibiting our realization and our transformative process, right? Because he even says it later, maybe it's in 41, but he talks about how these certain habits of thought, and I actually do that. Most of my life I've done it, at least to some degree, where I challenge myself to see things from different angles, even visually. Like I'll drive down the street or walk down the street and force myself to look at things differently. And it's amazing what you see, because there's this habitual sort of way of looking at things in a certain path of travel. And then if you interrupt that and you do it differently, you're like, oh my God, I never saw that building before. And I've done this walk for 10 years, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, I'm very excited about eventually getting into the psychotechnologies and practices that can actually embody what we're reading about, because I think that's what we're all here for anyway, isn't it? All right, it's very, very exciting.
So I wonder, if we could start to get at it through something that you said earlier about the capacity, witnessing the capacity for highly intelligent people to act less than intelligently.
Yeah.
Because in episode, I guess it was 41, so I am skipping ahead a little bit here.
Yeah.
Can I do that?
I think that does
Sure.
the committee allow that? I'm fine with it.
Sure. I think
so. He talks about foolishness being foolishness can occur when you have the fact pattern of a highly you can have highly intelligent person who is also highly irrational.
Yes.
Results in foolishness. That is the demonstration of foolishness. And then this is the part that I could maybe use some help on clarifying. I didn't quite understand it. So he parsed a relationship between two factors. So intelligence measured as G, and then he set it initially in an equivalency with, he marked it as GR. Was that the capacity for reason or for rationality itself?
Exactly. He's saying these are two separate factors, and he says all the studies have shown that the correlation is merely 0.3.
Right.
0.3.
0.3. Right. That's right.
So then he also goes into, it's not him, but I forget the Stanovich maybe?
Smensland
is basically asking the question, well, what makes up the difference then? What makes up the 0.7? And this is getting to your hope, I think, Michael, and the stuff that you're looking forward to more, is that at least in Stanovich's words, I think, I hope I'm saying that name correctly, the difference is explained by what he referred to as mindware and cognitive style.
Interesting. Okay. Mindware. I missed that term. What is it? What does mindware mean?
Well, that's what I was hoping to kind of tease out with the two of you. So
let's see if there's a definition.
Maybe if we answer what the cognitive style is first, we can back into the mindware. Basically, it's the together. Those are what is that? That's like the character of cognition itself. It's the character of cognition. You could probably just reduce it to the person's character.
It's an interesting point. How do you frame that? Like character, you mean like this?
Humble,
their temperament, so to speak, or
aware that I am biased. I cannot help but bring a biased frame to whatever it is that I'm trying, whatever it is that I'm observing, whatever
oh,
information is being taken in is colored by biases
yes.
that I cannot see myself.
And I know that, and I'm not going to pretend like that it's anything but that, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay, so I have a definition for mindware that might help.
Okay.
It refers to tools and techniques that can be used, one can use to improve reasoning and decision making. Similar to how software enhances computer performance, mindware enhances cognitive functions. It includes concepts, strategies, and cognitive tools that help people think more effectively and rationally. Those could be formal logic rules, scientific method, critical thinking frameworks, or even strategies like mnemonics or improving memory. Essentially, mindware is a set of tools that enables better mental processing and problem-solving abilities. So it
So
sounds,
I wonder if you could include mythology in that.
I think you can, because I think that's a major one that I've been working with of recent, and it's been very helpful. So, I mean, it seems like another word for psychotechnologies, but a very specific category of such, I think. You guys
Well,
agree
it's
with
going to
that?
be the ones that are personal. It's
Yeah,
it's going to
right.
be the tool set that you embody and that I embody. They're going to be different to
Yeah,
some extent, but if yours are better than mine, I can pay attention to what yours are and start to adopt them.
I think that's true. Yeah, I agree. That seems right. Very interesting. So,
I
huh,
really found in this chapter this difference between intelligence in general, G, and rationality, GR, that intelligence does not mean you are rational enough, right? And he
yeah,
summarizes it saying intelligence is necessary, but not sufficient. And using logic is actually necessary, but might not get you to be rational till you have all the other characteristics like we just discussed, either tools, methods, practices,
yeah,
habits
yeah,
that allow you to get past your uh, own self-deception.
yes, exactly. Did he tie, am I right that he tied intelligence into the whole concept of the adaptive machinery that can be gone into parasitic processing? Is it,
I didn't see it that way. He
no,
just says intelligence is general ability to solve problems,
right.
computational. It's like tied to,
Computational.
yeah,
Yep.
Computational,
tied
yeah.
to cognitive working memory processing.
Right, that's right. Yeah,
How
working memory.
quickly can you solve problems? How quickly, what is your overall cognitive computational processing capacity? And he ties it to working memory and how good you can, how quickly can you retrieve it? How can you process it to solve problems? And that is what SAT scores and other things test. But he then also says that that's necessary, but not enough for you
Yeah.
to fall down and make mistakes. And then he introduces the other set of scholars, Smedland, who's, I think, if it's worth reflecting on how they frame this issue. They frame this issue as, two ways to get answers wrong, right? This
Mm-hmm.
chart, I found that very helpful. One was, you know, you interpret the problem correctly, but then you go wrong in the logic, and therefore you come up with the wrong answer. Other is you don't even understand the problem correctly, right? And you apply the reasoning correctly, but you get to the wrong answer. And it's interesting because one focuses on the
Huh.
logical processes of, like, your logic was bad. That's why your conclusions were wrong. And 9 out of 10 times when we argue,
Yeah.
right? And I think this is my trained as an engineer, this is also my own shortcoming. And this is coming back to what you were saying, Michael. When I debate with people, I tend to go back to what are the data sources, the information you're reading. Can I debate that? And you came to, from the information you read, good or bad, you took 3 steps and you came to this conclusion. and I'm gonna disagree with you on the information you processed, and I'm gonna disagree with every step you took from that information. It's a very like it's a very left-brained, rational way of dispelling, and you never get off the ground. I know that because other person will fight with you on the valence or importance of the data sources, and they'll fight with you at every step of the logical conclusion with you. And I found over the years that there's no winning that. And that's not
No.
winning. There's no able, neither I nor they can change their, an error correction doesn't happen.
Well, that comes back to something that I think Vervaeke talked about before, or maybe now, maybe it's just someone else, which is that the highest level of seeking truth is discussing something to discover, not to prove yourself right.
Yeah.
That's different. That's actually true dialogue. That's what dialogue is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Dialectic, right? Is that it's exploration, sharing of perspectives in an attempt to find truth rather than to prove your point right. I think that is very cool because I agree. And I agree with you that this part about the way the errors can occur is profound because yeah, you can be brilliant at solving the problem, but if it's framed wrong, you're going to get it wrong anyway. It's like, and then that also if you don't have proper reasoning, you get wrong answer. So that's really helpful, I think, to look at our own errors. Like, I have an error of misunderstanding the issue, or do I have an error of how I'm processing information to come up with a conclusion, right? But no, did he describe clearly? I'm not sure I caught it. Why people, even though they know they're not using the wrong process, can't use the right process? Did he say why that was? Because I don't remember that he did.
Not in this particular episode. Go ahead.
Oh, he did. Okay. I thought I missed it, but maybe he didn't say it. So, because I thought that was incredible too, how, or even the fact that, see if I got this right, because I'm not sure I understood it fully. So you have two groups of people. One are told they were failing at this task, even though it was false. Other people said they were doing great at the task, even though that was wrong. But then where they were asked to do a task after that, the ones that got the fake rights thought they were overconfident about being good at this task, and the ones that had the fake wrongs had under kind of not as much confidence. Do you guys remember that part?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was on the discerning suicide notes.
Yeah. And so did he describe what's the mechanism that makes them keep on not using the proper thing that they know they should use? Did he nail that down? Because I'm not so sure he did.
He used a word. It was something like perseverance of belief.
Something like that. Yeah. Interesting.
It's another cognitive bias is how I understood that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. That's probably what it is.
What I found myself thinking was, if you go back to the formulation, that are you debating the logic train, or are you debating, or are you misunderstanding the problem at the top starting point? I find that more interesting conversations happen if you say at the start, not the logic, but what exactly is the reason why you believe that set of logic.
Yeah.
It could be that their problem statement or their problem commitment or problem understanding is so different that you can't get off the ground because you've just, so then going down the logic chain of my logic versus your logic is not helpful. If you don't have a shared view of the problem statement that you're starting with, and particularly in politics and other emotionally charged subjects.
Yes.
If you look at a couple of books, for example, there's a book on how to have difficult conversations or courageous conversations. All of them come back to have to change somebody's mind, you have to start with shared values.
That's right. I keep reading that too.
And shared values, so if it's just a abstract issue, you can talk about problem formulation. Then you might not agree with their problem formulation, right? If they say, your problem formulation around how to solve poverty in a country is quite different than my problem formulation around the problem, but that's still abstract. But if you're saying, you believe this problem is important because you share the value of A, B, and C, that such as suffering is not good, poor people need to cannot suffer, should not suffer as much as they do, then, and I believe the same. So then it becomes down to having shared values as a basis for perhaps continuing the dialogue or bootstrapping the dialogue. And that's very hard when you are in the mode of, you stupid idiot, how can you possibly believe that?
Yeah, right. How could you?
Tell you the 6 reasons why your data sources are wrong and why your logic is wrong.
Well, and I think that what that dialogue often can uncover is that they have the same concerns, but different ideas of how to solve it, right? Because they want the same thing, but they think the way of solving it is different because they have different temperaments, right?
Yeah.
It's
a lot of
yeah.
that I think is interesting.
So the line of questioning that I really want to ask there is why is this problem interesting to you in the first place? Like somehow we came to this problem together. We may not agree on its solution, but step even behind that and say, why is it an interesting problem to you?
Yeah,
Why are you committed? Why are you committed to this?
Yeah, why is it so salient to you? That's a great question to ask
And what's
someone.
in it for you to address this problem?
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, Cam.
Wow, that's great, because then you can uncover, hopefully, the core orientation behind their reason to be concerned.
Yes or no? Because so other than mindware, the other thing he talks about on how to correct this gap of rationality versus intelligence is that what he calls a cognitive style of active open-mindedness, AOM.
Yes.
Right? So that is a sum total of what Cam was saying. Am I open to searching for truth versus being right, being shown right? And all the things around, am I open to new data? Am I open to new way of thinking, changing my frame, getting new insight? All of that he bundles as active open-mindedness.
Yeah.
And my rejoinder to is that very often I find that if the other person doesn't have this truth-seeking versus being proven right mindset, they might not have active open-mindedness as a practice. In which case, it's very frustrating, but right away, it becomes like, I believe this because that's the right thing to believe. That's like my group believes it, my club, my book club believes it. My status would be lowered if I don't believe in this. So then all the 10 things that have nothing to do with active open-mindedness become reason for them to dig their heels in.
Yeah, no, the other thing that comes up when you're talking about that for me is I'm curious about what I learned in the personality psychology course I took, which said that openness is actually a trait that's mostly genetically driven, and some people actually don't have it. They're better at other things, but they're not open. Actually, they don't have that orientation, which I wonder if there is any way to get around that. I don't know, but I'm intrigued by that thought. I mean, is it, are some people just not open and they can't be reached, or is it just take some other sort of approach? I don't know, but
that's cool hand Luke, man. Some people you just can't reach.
is that I don't remember that quote. That's good. I need to put
Guns N' Roses incorporated it into their song, into one of their songs.
I should paste that on my forehead because
some people you just can't reach.
Because I get frustrated with certain people in my life because I try to reach them and it's just like, why do I bother? But maybe I shouldn't be pounding against that door. I don't know.
Well, that's the answer that I relentlessly come to. It's just like, well, to me, it's an externalization of the process of salience. It's like, I got a part here. Like if you're in front of me, that's not by accident.
Nope.
So what did I do to end up in a circumstance where there's somebody in front of me that just can't be reached?
Yeah, so I think this idea of, so I guess for me, the personal journey is I get frustrated because I start engaging with a mindset that we are going to be exploring something together. And very quickly, if I know the other person cannot be reached, then
Like,
I'm the fool. I'm the person who's wasting time. So perhaps the idea, maybe the flip it is to say, what is the kind of signal do you need to say, is it even worth having? Are you even open? What would change your mind?
right.
Have you heard that? I found that really refreshing. If we are going to have a conversation on this subject, what would change your mind?
That's really
So
helpful that you guys have the same experience, because this is something that's plagued me for my whole life. It's why I left my book club. They didn't want to have this discussion. They didn't want to dig deep and kind of reflect and figure out. They just wanted to kind of, kind of sail through and have fun, which is fine, but that's not what I wanted. I want what we're doing. And so I had,
90% of the social groups are there for social consensus
yeah,
and for whatever the
yeah,
status and satisfaction that gives. And you are changing the rules on them by saying, how about some uncomfortable truth seeking? And this,
exactly.
I'm here for wine and chips,
like,
man.
no, 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 no.
It's actually, it's why I got in so much trouble with my family. I mean, I was a disruptor in my family because I'm like, wait a minute. First of all, let's tell the truth about what is. That
Yeah.
wasn't very popular. And then let's face it and transform it for the better. And boy, that was not popular. Jesus, it's like, that was not popular. It's like, and I'm like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, I thought this was for the best. I mean, not for everyone, apparently. So, this kind of clarifies why I get in trouble so often in my life. It's this.
So the practice there is to for me anyway. I fail at it reliably, but it's to try to discover how it is that I can be a loving presence, even in such circumstances. Like
that's what it's all
that's the
about.
work that is presented to me in that circumstance.
I think you're right, and it's part of being a wise person. I think. I think it's part of wisdom.
Starting point is not to see that and not and step out of that conversation and say this is not.
Yeah.
And I struggle with it. I struggle with it. I've gotten off of social media with many of my WhatsApp groups precisely because I don't want to engage, and I know they're not looking to change their mind. And
Hmm.
so I think I just retreat.
Well, this I had this crazy experience with the church I'm attending. I met with second, just three pastors. I met with two of them, and the second one I met with, I told him about my journey and what I'm after and all this, and he says to me at near the end of the meeting, he said, "I want to prepare you." He says, "Not everyone that comes to this church is as far along as you are, and you need not to judge them for that, or be disappointed by it." And he says they've been coming for years, and maybe they're still struggling with fundamentals. And I was like, "Oh." And I'm actually really grateful he said that, because I am prepared now. I've actually readjusted my expectations and realized that I do this all the time, and I've got to stop projecting on the rest of the world that has the same orientations, capacities, and interests that I have. That's been part of my tripping point my whole life, is not realizing that everyone wants to find out what I want. And it doesn't, I used to feel superior. I don't do that anymore. But it's not their interest or their capacity, and that's all right. So,
So
huh.
I wonder, have you started to move into creation of artistic work?
Well,
Have you
I'm an artist by training. I mean, that's my first career. So,
do you
um,
practice is what I'm asking you though. Do you actually
well,
produce?
I'm doing it through my videos right now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my outlet for it, because I'm trying to figure out how to articulate what I see, which is
Yeah.
very hard because the way my brain works does not translate very well to words.
Yeah.
And I think I may pick up the brush and pen and ink again at one point to be able to express it in that way, which might be a little bit more accessible. We'll see. But I've been studying symbols for that reason. I took Peugeot's symbol course on Peterson Academy, which is excellent. I started, and I haven't gotten very far yet in there's a one about storytelling that's in that course
Uh,
as well. And so I'm trying to fortify my vocabulary, my visual vocabulary, in the
yeah.
direction of what you're saying. Actually, that's and also I'm studying Jung too.
More
Nice.
than that, Michael, you are so active in your YouTube for the work-related stuff that you do. That's all creative output, like producing YouTube videos for your patients and your audiences.
Yeah, it's
And
it's crazy. I did one episode, or it's a meeting. I call it practice and support session before I met you guys tonight, from 5 to 7, and so hilarious. I thought I was not as prepared as I wished. I was, I could tell that I was putting ideas together as I went to some degree, because I didn't have time to write it all out. And everyone was like, best episode, best session we've ever had. Oh my
Nice.
God, it was so hilarious. I'm like, God, it just shows you just don't fucking know how well you're coming across, by your own measure. I mean, it's like when I think I'm clear, no one can fucking understand me. And when I feel like I'm kind of stumbling around, they're like, wow, my God, this was great. So it's a really funny, humbling process. I mean, I just know that the reason I do the sessions once a month is because it forces me to articulate. And that's the purpose of it primarily. And I'm thrilled that people are getting a lot of value. I mean, 2 people that have been with me for years, they're the ones that help me with the videos, but they come to the sessions. They told me, they said, the last 3 things I've done, the last 3 months has just been mind-blowingly helpful to their life. And very touched by that. They're just like, oh my God, it just saved us, because one of them has PTSD problems, and she was having chronic pain recently. And she said the last episode about truth, I did one called Truth is Curative. She said it really altered her whole trajectory when I explained what that meant. And that was my favorite thing I've done so far. The Truth is Curative, actually, because it helped me so much to kind of review that. So anyway, yeah,
uh,
that's my outlet at the moment, is that, and my work, because my work is very creative and intuitive too, even though it's very technical. So anyway,
you brought that up, Cam. It was very insightful of you to bring up this idea of what are you doing to be creative in lieu of criticizing. So this idea of create instead of criticize is such a fantastic pivot. What do you do?
yeah, Ken,
Uh,
what's your expression?
um, I write a lot. I've started to play, well, I started playing about a year ago with mandalas. So
Cool.
creating mandalas.
Oh, neat.
And then the play with others. So the Evolve Move Play Fellowship, that that continues to be just a quite a wellspring. Like the to be in spaces with other people where it's almost none of it is propositional,
That's amazing.
highly improvisational. You cannot help but discover truth. Uh, and the the three of us, I think, find each other interesting because we do all kind of share that. It's like an engineering mindset. It's like you're wanting to understand the why behind what's going on, how things are working, why and how things are occurring the way that they are, and um, the movement practices. I think Rafe is really onto something, but considering parkour and epistemology, and maybe the epistemology.
Yep.
So that
Are you
linking
near?
linking linking different practices together, like full body practices together in community, it feels very it energizes me for sure. It does feel like it's building something. It's something greater. Like I don't know where it goes, but it feels as though I'm participating in something greater than myself for sure.
That's, are you near his facility?
Yeah.
Oh God, you're so lucky. I'm a bit jealous, because I wish I had more of that, and I feel like I'm being called in that direction more. So I got to
And
figure
where
out how to.
exactly are you located, if I may ask?
Say again.
Where are you situated?
I'm in North Bend, Washington. So I'm about 35 minutes east of Seattle.
Okay.
And Rafe is
Yeah.
up in Bellingham, which is
Okay.
about 2 hours from here.
So
Okay.
that's within reach. That's not too bad, right?
Yeah, and there's quite a few practitioners locally as well.
Hmm.
And in the apprenticeship cohort that I'm a part of, there's a fellow down in Portland that we've worked together a couple of times now in person. Um, and then there's another one. I haven't worked in person with him yet, but he's over in Idaho. So it's plus there's a whole like my sense is that there's a whole community. Like it's something that Rafe has been working on for I don't know how
Yeah,
long, at least 10
years.
years. I think it's like closer to 20. So it's a pretty eclectic group, it feels like, and it feels very grassroots and it feels like the connections are starting to be made with at an increasing pace. So it's it's gratifying.
That's terrific. What about you, Anurag? What is your embodied practice?
You know, when I switched out of operating roles 3 years ago, I moved to um, coaching and teaching and mentoring. And I've been teaching online and mentoring online. All my work is focused on technology founders. And I have found that I really am good at it and I enjoy it. So I've started creating video courses and
Hmm.
practices, and I have a handful of founders I coach one-on-one. And I'm also teaching in person. I have office hours as one of the tech communities. So those turn out to be my creative outlets for now. And every time I kind of want to get away from abstract or argumentation on politics or stuff that I really might have an opinion on, but that's like me criticizing the world. It's not like I'm an active politician standing for office. So at some point I say, while I might be fully invested in it, it doesn't really matter. It's all in the head. What I really want to do is practice more of what Cam was saying. How do I express myself creatively? And that's how I do it for
So it
now.
sounds like you're facilitating people's transformative process,
And
right?
particularly, I am helping early stage companies and founders really grow their company and
Yeah.
build teams and all that. So that's satisfying because I do workshops sometimes that I see at the end of it, they have a new path or whatever. So that's interesting. Although I have some personal creative outlets like drawing or poetry, but I have not found time for that yet. But bottom line is, I think having some creative expression is such an important part, physical or musical or
Hmm.
teaching or whatever it might be, as you were saying. And which interestingly, I want to tie back to a comment I just saw in episode we are talking about,
Oh, good.
which
Bring us
is
back. Thank you.
which says that effectively for you to have active open-mindedness and be open to catching your own biases through that openness, uh, it's super important that you have social interaction and support
Yep.
Yeah.
because you can't do that in isolation. You're too close
No,
to
you
your
can't.
own folly. So I think all of us, what we are saying is that we have to be part of some group, whether it's online session or in person or whatever, that allows us to make some progress against our own biases.
Yeah, I agree. And like the church has been a really transformative place for me and my girlfriend. And it has all these aspects of ritual or yeah, how did Vervaeke said? He says you know, some sort of philosophy nested in ritual, nested in a community. And we've both seen really incredible effects on our health and our relationship from it. Because we sing, you hear a message, you sing, um, you join together. There's what do you call it, community and hospitality as part of the value, and it's like, wow, this is really great. I have to say, it's really great. Um, they don't have parkour there, unfortunately, but
Not yet.
not
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 yet.
yet,
yet.
not until I bring it in. Like, so
So
that's something I'd like to have more of, but we'll see. I've got to figure out how to integrate it one step at a time.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we're
we are on time. This is a
yep.
wonderful place, wonderful comment and places to close our conversation today. I want to thank both of you for a wonderful conversation that I was not expecting, and we are exploring territory that we did not think we would. I would leave with that gratitude.
I totally agree. This is incredible. So enriched
Likewise.
this interaction. So glad that we're doing this as always.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah. So okay. So what are our next episodes? Are we?
Thank you. Let me stop the recording.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So yeah.
Thank you, everyone.